There's a book by Colonel David Hackworth called Steel My Soldiers' Hearts, The Hopeless to Hardcore Transformation of U.S. Army 4th Battalion, 39th Infantry, Vietnam. It was a bestseller, and the cover features a photo of an infantry platoon on patrol. In the foreground of that photo, walking point, is a young draftee from New Mexico named Red Eagle Rael. Rael's tour started in February of 1968 in the Mekong Delta. His nickname was Chief, which I understand was a common nickname for Native Americans serving in Vietnam. Having earned a Purple Heart, an Air Medal with 2 oak leaves, an Army Commendation with V device and 1 oak leaf, and several other decorations, Rael is a kind of living legend in New Mexico. I first ran into him in the form of a painting. J.D. Challenger's Ashes to Dust was made into a poster that's a big seller in the gift shop at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial at Angel Fire, which you can learn more about by listening to episode 58 of this podcast. Anyway, the figure in the painting was inspired by Red Eagle, and when I found out that he only lived about 50 miles away, I said I'd like to meet him. The response was less than encouraging. I guess not too many outsiders get to meet Red Eagle. He shows up for ceremonies, such as the groundbreaking for the State Veterans Cemetery in Angel Fire, but he's reluctant to talk very much about himself. Chuck Howe, a retired lieutenant colonel who is the president of the foundation that funds the memorial at Angel Fire, knows Red Eagle personally and agreed to run the idea by him. A few days later, I met Chuck in Taos, and he drove me to Picuris Pueblo, where Red Eagle invited me into his home and let me mic him up and ask a bunch of questions. In this episode, we'll bring you that interview. Stick around. From the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, founders of The Wall, this is Echoes of the Vietnam War. I'm your host, Michael Crone, bringing you stories of service, sacrifice, and healing from people who still feel the impact of that conflict more than 50 years later. This is episode 67, Red Eagle. Do you have loved ones who survived the Vietnam War but died after returning home? Did you know you can honor them at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C.? We're accepting applications for the 2024 In Memory Honor Roll through March 29th. We also have an In Memory Facebook group with more than 20,000 members, so be sure to join that if you want to feel part of a community of people who've experienced a loss similar to yours. You'll find the In Memory Honor Roll application and a link to the Facebook group by going to vvmf.org and clicking on In Memory.
Hello, I'm Gary Sinise. Nearly 3 million Americans served in Vietnam, and more than 58,000 have their names inscribed on the wall. Those that pay the ultimate price in service to America. Some might ask why the Vietnam War still matters. It matters because more than 58,000 lives were cut short and their families forever changed. It matters because we should never forget how Vietnam veterans were treated when they came home. A lesson learned so that our current generation of veterans are treated with respect. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, the organization that built the wall, works to ensure that future generations will understand the war's impact. I'm asking you to help keep the promise the wall was built on. Never forget. Visit vvmf.org to find out how you can get involved.
The Registry is an online community created by VVMF that connects veterans of the Vietnam War era with each other. By signing up for the Registry, you can upload and share stories and images, connect with others who served during the Vietnam era, and connect your service with people you knew whose names are now on the wall. Join the community and preserve your legacy or a family member's by signing up today at vvmf.org/registry. Let's talk about the wall for a minute. It is widely considered to be the memorial that changed memorials, forever. Its design invites a level of engagement, of introspection, of reverence that no fountain, no statue of a cannon or a man on a horse could ever match. The volunteers who work there often talk about wall magic, that unexpected, often spiritual connection or discovery that happens when you visit the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. It's one of the reasons why the wall's design has inspired so many other memorials around the world. Of course, there is one little problem with the wall's design. 140 panels of polished black granite aren't exactly portable. So, unless you can get yourself to Washington, D.C., how are you supposed to experience wall magic for yourself? Well, guess what? We already thought of that. In 1996, VVMF unveiled an exact replica of the wall that could be packed into an 18-wheeler and hauled to cities and towns all across America. Since then, the wall that heals has been displayed in nearly 700 communities throughout the nation, spreading the healing legacy of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial to millions of visitors. Sure, there are other versions of the wall that travel around the country, but the wall that heals is the only one that is an exact replica of the one in Washington, created and maintained by the same organization that built the wall in the first place. And not only that, the wall that heals is accompanied and curated by VVMF employees who work with host communities to ensure that the experience is as close as possible to the real thing. And that includes wall magic. But you don't have to take my word for it. You can check out episode 15 of this podcast to learn what happens to people's hearts when this traveling exhibit rolls into a real-life American community. The Wall That Heals and the mobile education center that travels with it will be in Wailuku, Hawaii, February 9 through 13. To see the rest of this year's tour schedule and to learn how you can bring the Wall That Heals to your town, visit vvmf.org. On the drive from Taos to Picuris Pueblo, Chuck Howe told me a little about Red Eagle's experiences in Vietnam, stories he'd heard firsthand from Red Eagle. But he warned me that Red Eagle didn't like to share those experiences with many people. What follows is what Red Eagle was generous enough to share with me, a total stranger.
My name's Red Eagle Rael. I'm from Picuris Pueblo. That's in northern New Mexico. I'm 76 years old, and I was born and raised in Picuris Pueblo, and I got drafted, and
What year did you get drafted?
1967. 67.
How old were you?
68. 19.
19. Can you talk a little bit about just the experience of getting drafted? Did you receive a letter? Did somebody come to the house? How did that work?
Yes, I did. I got the greetings card. And I was still in school yet. I had went to a vocational school. So I was deferred for about a year, or a little over a year. As soon as I dropped out, I guess they knew I was out somehow. So I got drafted. And
where'd you have to go?
Well, I had to come back to Albuquerque. I was working in Indiana for a while after I got out. And then my local, or whatever you call it, was in Taos County, but the recruiting center was in Albuquerque. So I came home, and my dad took me down to the Greyhound station, got on the Greyhound bus, and I met a few of the local guys from some of the other pueblos. A young friend that I grew up with, guess I'll mention his name because his family and I were pretty close. His name is Paul Mondragon. We grew up as kids. We were kind of like 14, 15 years old when I first met him. I went to a neighborhood youth corps program, and he was in the program. And by golly, we were about exactly almost the same age, about maybe 12, 14 days difference in our age. So I get out in the Greyhound bus and I see him there. I see him sitting on the next seat there with his little duffel bag. I mean his little gym bag. Probably had the same things I had. A toothbrush and pair of shorts and socks. Anyway, he says, "Oh, so they got you too," he tells me. I says, "Yep."
Now, did you grow up with, was there military in your family?
Yes, I had 2 other brothers that served.
What about your father?
My father, no, he never served in it, but I had a brother that served in Korea. My older brother, the oldest brother, he served in Korea. And then the next one, he not too sure what he did, but he went to airborne school and he served in Germany, and he never talked too much about it. So, but that's it, the 2. And then I got drafted. Then my younger brother, just as I was getting out, he also got drafted. His name was Alfred Rael, and he got drafted just about the same time that I was getting out. So we had 4 members from my family served.
All the boys.
All boys, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess you can say we're military.
Where did you go after you were drafted and inducted?
We went from Albuquerque down to El Paso, Fort Bliss, and we did our 8 weeks training there. And from there came home. We had to leave, I guess, 20-some days or so. Next thing they tell us, you're going to Fort Polk, Louisiana. When we got there, we knew it looks like jungle training. So I said, well, we were barely learning about Vietnam, it was pretty. So when we were there in the jungles, we were saying, okay, I guess we know where we're going now. So after another 8 more weeks of training, we were flew to, I believe, San Diego. What's the base there in San Diego? I guess that's where we flew out there. From there, I believe we flew to the little island in Guam, and can't remember exactly how many hours. There 26 hours flying time. We refueled in the Guam, one of the little islands, and man, after so many hours, just slept and eat and listened to Elvis Presley songs. So we did. And when we're getting close to Vietnam, the pilot tells us, "Here you are, look down below." Beautiful place, beautiful green and turquoise-looking islands as we're flying in. Then another 5-10 minutes later, he says, "Well, I have to warn you, we're in a free fire zone," or something like that. And as we were flying over, we could see the crater holes already. Craters where the artillery has started blowing up. So I said, "Man, I guess we're in for it now. We don't have no choice."
So where did you land?
We landed at Long Binh.
Long Binh.
Yeah, when we flew in there, as soon as we got off the plane, you can feel that humidity hit you in the face. And I said, "Oh my goodness, I don't like this place. I got to make it back home." It's the first thing came out of my mind. And I had that attitude since I was there. I said, "This is not my country."
And what month and year did you land?
Those I'm not exactly. I think it's February of 68. 68 and 69, I spent that year there. So those dates, I'm not exactly sure the date and stuff. I have to look at my DD-14. But anyway, as soon as we got out of the plane, they told us, okay, quick step, run to the bunker. And we went down to an underground bunker. Then we had a real taste. We could see some of the old veterans that were getting ready to come home, I believe. A few of them would ask us where we were from and all this thing, and so we're going down. But as soon as we got in there, we start handing us our jungle fatigues and the weapons. Next thing, after we stayed overnight, I believe we had a quick, I don't remember what time, it might have been a quick supper there. We're sitting on a table and you can see the salt shaker was so humid, the salt won't even come out of the shaker. I said, this is humidity. So anyway, next morning they put us in a big old buses. And I didn't know exactly where we were going. I guess we were going to the reception center, I guess you could call it. But the buses had rebar and the windows were the glasses were taken out, but they had rebar and screens on the window. They said when we drive through some of these villages, some of them people will throw hand grenades through the bus, inside the bus. So I said, yeah, we're really in it now.
Well, and February of '68 was a hell of a time to arrive.
Just right at the offensive was happening, so yeah, we were getting rushed right through. And after that, it's just things start happening so fast. We already had our weapons, live ammo and everything. I don't think they gave us no grenades, but we just had our M16 and some ammo. Then we went into a place, I think it was called Bearcat or a little, where we had to get acclimated. They put us out there for like security. They said it was a safe place, but we could hear all the artillery and all that going on around us. But we stayed in this base just to what they called that we were getting acclimated to the temperature and all that. And that was about 4 or 5 days or something like that. Next thing, they sent us to our unit, and that's how I was assigned to the 9th Infantry Division, 4th of the 39th Bravo Company. That's who I served with.
Okay. So how did you get from that facility to your unit?
We got trucked out first, and we were heading to Dongtam, which was our base, all in the swamps, and also we got trucked out to one of the rivers along there, there's so many rivers down in the Delta, and we got trucked out there, and the first night we were picked up by these flatboats with the drop gate. And we slept on that boat for all the night, right on top of that cold steel. And we were waiting for more recruits, I believe, because we stayed there maybe all night and then part of the next day. And eventually we moved off. And we moved off to, I don't know where we went. This is all new territory. We moved off, and then we finally reached where our Bravo Company was. And they were waiting for us. They were all glad to see us. First thing they asked, if anybody from Ohio, anybody from Texas, anywhere. And then nobody asked if there's anybody from New Mexico, of course. But then they just assigned me to the sergeant there. His name was Sergeant Slaughter, I believe. And we had to introduce ourselves, where we were from. I told him from New Mexico, Native American. Sergeant Slaughter says, I want him on my squad, so that's how I ended up in the 2nd Platoon, 2nd Squad, Bravo Company. And from there, we just moved off up and down the, I guess it was the Mekong River. I thought it was in a big old ocean. It was so big. And we went to some site. Of course, the names, I ain't going to remember any of the names where I've ever been so many different places, but I don't remember any of the names. But we got to this one place where they had been operating out of. And stayed there a couple of days, just hanging out. I guess we're waiting for resupply. And sure enough, a couple of days later, a couple of choppers bringing our sea rats and ammo. And guess what? They sent all the greenhorns out there to go get it. And first taste of action, they were really shooting at the helicopters. So of course the veterans sent all the greenhorns down there to get all the stuff off. Luckily nobody got hit, but the choppers just dropped them off and they were gone. And oh no. I says, this is some serious business. And hopefully I get through this. So that was one hell of a week just to get the introduction to Vietnam and Bravo Company. But as time went on, we thought, oh yeah, we're gung-ho, I'm going to make it. But when you start looking forward to your time, you see people with these calendars. They call them the short time calendar, a long time calendar. I didn't even bother thinking about a calendar yet, but as you talk to some of the older veterans there, they'd had maybe two or 3 months. They're the ones that had a short time calendar. They would mark off every day that they were there. They would say, what was the saying they had was, 28 more days and a wake up. And that's what they had to go, and they would mark off that day. And I said, I hope I reach that day one of these days, but man, a year's a long time. A year's really a long time when you're sleeping out in them boonies, thinking if you're going to make it another week, another day, or whatever. And the mosquitoes, terrible mosquitoes, humidity, and we're just barely getting started. When the monsoon comes, you're soaking wet 24 hours a day. Very, very nasty situation, but we're there, you got no choice.
I'm curious, you mentioned the mosquitoes. Were you bothered by any other wildlife, snakes, monkeys?
We did see a few snakes and a lot of, crabs and of course everybody talks about the ants, the red ants, thousands of those. You'd go through there, stinging ants. They were more of a pest, but they really hurt when they stung you. And then there was a spider, almost as big as my hand, about that big. It looked like bigger than a silver dollar. It was black and yellow, sort of looked like the color of a bumblebee, but he had long talons. It was an ugly looking thing, man. I didn't like those things at all, and they were all over there, running to them every now and then.
How long would you be out there in the boonies and everything?
Oh, we were always constantly out there. We'd be out there for 3-4 weeks at a time. Then once in a while we'll get supply. We'd go back to a certain area where it was considered safe. We'd get resupplied, mail call, which was always good. But maybe like month or so, we'd go back to downtown to the base, shower up and clean up and get more mail. But I'd say we spent 2 months before we actually came back to the base. We were always out in the boonies.
Can I ask you about mail call?
Sure.
Who did you get mail from?
Well, at that time, my first wife, she was my girlfriend. She sent me a lot of mail. And then my mom would write me. She wrote to me about twice, I guess, sometimes. But I didn't get very much mail, just other than that. And maybe around Christmas time, I got a package or something like that, but I didn't get that much mail.
Do you remember the moment when you felt like a soldier? Like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm good at this job.
Yeah, that comes after a while, maybe after 2 to 3 months, probably. And then some of the Sergeant Slaughter, I believe his name, he was fairly good, and he always, kept an eye out. Plus, I met another guy another old timer from, I think it was Brownsville, Texas. He sort of took me under his wing too, and I was learning a lot from them. Of course, I grew up here in the mountains. I was hunting all the time, and so I know how to live up in the mountains. And hunting gives you some. You get pretty sharp eye. You listen to all these things going on. So maybe within the 3 months, I could tell what was going on. I could see the signs, and then I felt pretty confident about myself. And I felt sorry for a lot of the guys that grew up in the city. They would go out there. Some of them just walk around like they were in the streets back home or something. And I would tell them, keep your head down. And every time we stopped to take a break, I looked around my area. I always scoped everything out, and I would almost make sure that there was a place you could cover, where you had cover. So that's what you learn as time moves on. And then you get a little confident, and you start feeling a little better, maybe safer, and you can sleep at night. The first few nights, it was terrible. You didn't know, and everything's so foreign to you. It's terrible. So eventually, you might call it, you get a little relaxed, but you're never completely. There's always this fear of, death around you. And it happened every now and then, so. And when you saw it, that was a wake-up call, you knew that guy.
What was your job in the squad?
Well, I was a rifleman. Mm-hmm. Just because I was Native American, they always put me up in point. And I was good at it.
Why do you say just because?
Pointmen, well, that was their theory. They think that Native Americans are good guides, or, and everything. But like I said, I did have actually, after a while, you start getting confident, and then you make friends with all these different guys. And you can see that they don't have they weren't experienced, even though they've been there. They just walk through making noises, or they take you places where you could run into booby traps. Well, that time I could tell where the bad spots were. So I pulled point for a while, because just for the safety of me and the rest of my platoon. But after a while, when I got them through so many bad, situations, the lieutenant would always try to get me out in front. I said, no, I can only do so much. So there was a time I had to just back off, especially when I was getting short.
Yeah.
And during one of those times, several times I found some booby traps that I avoided by keeping my eyes open. We found what we call a dud, one of the U.S. artillery rounds, was booby trapped, and it was a 155 artillery. If we'd have ran over that and it was booby trapped, we'd have probably wiped out the whole platoon. So I spotted that, and we had to call the demolition derby to come and blow it out. And then the lieutenant was so thankful that we got past that. But that was one of the scariest situations, that he didn't hurt anybody. But most of the time we went into small booby traps, hand grenades, and mostly little traps like that. And a lot of hand grenades that were tied to the trees and trip lines over the trails. And you had to avoid the trails. See, that's the thing, because everybody wants to walk where it's easier to walk, but the safest place was out in the middle of the paddy. People would love to walk on the dikes, and that's where the booby traps were. So I avoided all that when I was there, and I think I did a good job by saving a lot of men, because I say maybe at least 50% of our accidents were from booby traps, deaths, and we lost a lot of men just with booby traps. So that was, and of course the few firefights. I don't want to talk too much about that, because that's something that's always stayed with me, and so I'll have to defer from saying anything like that.
I mean, without getting into specifics about the firefights, can you talk about the situations? Were you in the middle of nowhere? Were you in villages? Did you encounter Vietnamese people? No.
Yeah, we'd see a lot of as long as we were going, a lot of the civilians along the different rural areas where we were at, but, they would say they're farmers by day, but fighters at night. But occasionally, when we run into the NVA, they'd be waiting for us most of the time. And what was the other question you asked me about?
That's okay. That's fine.
But I remember one specific issue I can tell you, but I won't mention what happened. Actually, it's written in that book. I was serving under Colonel Hackworth, David H. Hackworth. That's me right there. It's point man, see? That's the whole squad there. Just happened to get that. He was the commander.
And did he shoot this?
I don't know. I barely remember the picture getting there, but that's we were under Colonel J. Hackworth.
Okay.
And that's him there. He was also a reporter here on CNN. He did the military. Maybe you heard of him, no. Colonel Hackworth. He actually was from Australia, I believe. He was in World War II, Korea, and I don't know. But he was our commander for a while. He actually flew out to the one firefight that we had, and he was flying around on his little loach, shooting from there. He got shot through the leg. And there's one part where in Dong Tam where they blew up the ammo dump. That's well documented throughout Dong Tam. They blew the ammo dump and rocketed it. They were rocketing it, and I don't know. It says the dates there. I'm not going to be familiar with the dates. But we all got our main platoon, second squad. We got hit pretty good with RPG rounds. Rocket. We lost a few men that day, and I got shrapnel. So Colonel Hackworth, he also got hit. We ended up being in the same bunker back in Dong Tam. It's quite a coincidence, but that's one of the firefights that we lost the most men. I think we lost 7 men that day, but that's all I can say about that. I don't want no details.
I understand.
And then I was already like 7-8 months there, and so all the old guys had left, and pretty much we were the veterans. So I heard that the war was starting to end. Nixon was going to do a big pullout. We were well already there, probably 8 or 9 months already when we heard about it. But that was kind of a relief when we heard that. And that's what we'd wait for, and that's all we thought about was, when is this pullout going to happen? And some of the units were already getting pulled out, but once in a while we'd read the Stars and Stripes and they'd say, oh, who was getting pulled out and stuff. But it never worked for us because we stayed almost our complete year, and then when it was time to come home, they were calling it a pullout, but our term had ended. So it wasn't really a pullout. I was kind of let down, but either way, I was just glad to get home and get on that bird and fly home.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Can you talk about what it was like to come home?
Yes, I turned my 21st birthday in Vietnam when I turned 21, Then we came home, and coming back home was, what a delight. It was you couldn't believe that we were actually going home when you get in that bird and you're waiting and waiting. And it's the greatest feeling when you get to fly and you're going to land back in the United States. And I made up for a whole year. We partied a lot. And we met all our friends, in the bus where we're going, let's get together Everybody hid their different way. I probably saw 2 veterans that we served with. Everybody split their own way and everything. And then once we get home, I did. I kind of wanted to just put it out of my mind. And I did for a while. I never talked about it. And I think a lot of veterans felt that way. Just try to get back to work and try to become a normal life. But it's impossible. You'll never become a normal person again with what happened behind you. You think it's going to go away, and actually you want it to go away, but it never goes away. It's always going to be there. Certain times, a certain thing will come out, and you're hoping it would have ended and stuff, and there's with that PTSD and all this, your mind never lets it go. It's always going to be with you, and eventually you just got to deal with it. And some people deal with it pretty good, others have a harder time, but
How did you do?
I was rough, very rough for the first time. You feel proud that you served and all this, and people come home. It's true about the people calling us baby killers and all these different things in the airports, and then even when you come home, very few family members even cared. They said, well, oh yeah, you served, so what? So you go underground, sort of. You just don't want to. You don't even tell them. I wore my uniform once just to get when I got home. Put it in the closet, and there it hung for years and years, and that's it. Then eventually I got help. Maybe 30 years later, the VA helped me.
Helped you? What do you mean?
I got, I was treated for PTSD and.
I see. And was there anything that triggered your decision to seek help?
Well, yeah, there was a bunch of times I thought about it, but some of the agents that I went back in them days, they said, oh yeah, bring your application here, and I guess they would throw it in the back shelf somewhere, never heard anything. But I had a pretty steady job. I worked for the electric company. I became a journeyman lineman, so I had pretty steady work. But after a while, the company, merged and moved away. So then when I was without a job, I was doing construction jobs here and there. And there were times when it was pretty lean. I didn't have a job. So that's when I got serious to start applying for some sort of a disability from the VA, which they helped me after a while. So that was.
Are you comfortable talking a little bit about just how your PTSD manifested itself? What were the things that made you know that you needed help?
Well, it's funny. It seems like you don't know there's something wrong with you, but you don't know what it is, you know. You get angry and all these crazy things you want to do, and then you get violent. You know, I had a lot of violent experiences, fighting. Then you start doing your alcohol abuse, and you just wonder what causing you to do all those. Because I was a pretty nice guy before I went in, but you can get carried away, and eventually I went to counseling, and they told me what was wrong. I said, okay. So I did help me, and then eventually, when I started going to, for counseling, and I had several good counselors, and particularly one old doctor that I remember, he told me, listen, it's not your fault. The Army tells you you're gung-ho, you're the greatest, and you think nothing can kill you, but you're not made out of steel. You start thinking about all the bad things that happen and everything, and nightmares and all these things. If you're a common, simple man, you can't say that it didn't scare you. You were scared almost every damn day of the war. And some people just break up, but you have to deal with it. And the day you deal with it is hide it, keep it inside. And that's what builds up. And he told me you got to get it off your chest. It's the best thing to do, and no matter what you do, to get it out and say all the bad things that happen. And if you talk about it a little bit, it's better than holding it in. So this old man finally told me that. He says, they get you hooked, they give you cigarettes, free cigarettes all you want, you can go drink all you want, and we follow one another just to the bar like sheep. Okay, you can have a weekend, go get all the beer you want, smoke all you want, even the women over there, go get them. So the Army's kind of encouraging us in a way, so we think that's good. You come back, you're hooked on cigarettes, booze, and everything else. And then when you come home, you're trying to get away from that. And that's when I knew I needed help.
Well, the transition is so abrupt. It's like flipping a switch. Now you're a civilian.
You're right.
Yeah, a month ago, you were in the
heat of it, in the bush.
Yeah.
Then when you come home, I remember I told you, we make friends with these guys, or the real friends that I serve with. Gave me my address. Oh, we'll get together. Let's do this. And out of the 7 men that came back with me, I think there's only 3 of us left. They're gone, and we called maybe once in a while. I called this guy, Danny O'Brien. He told me, if it's a Vietnam vet, he told me, the hell with you, I don't want nothing to do with none of them. And his daughters said, I'm sorry. He hung up, so never got to see him again, still today. Anyway, that was your little family. So you're alone actually when you come home, and just with your thoughts. And luckily, I have a good woman that she understands. So that helps a lot.
How'd you meet her?
Hitchhiking.
Really? Was she hitchhiking or you?
I was hitchhiking. Yeah, and she picked me up. So.
How long ago was that?
Oh, going about 25 years ago.
Mm.
So that's pretty much the story there.
Mm. Have you ever visited the wall?
Yes, I have.
Was there anybody in particular you looked for?
Yes. Like I say, I at least know 7 or 8 guys from my platoon, plus other people that I've met along the way too. So there's a list of friends and some of the tribal members that also, we lost 2 guys in Vietnam from the Pueblo. So I didn't serve with them, but they were in other units, but see, they were still in Vietnam. So I've been to the wall at least 3 times, I guess. And I was asking Chuck about, they have that statue there with 3 veterans out the wall. and they don't have a Native American that shows. I was wondering why. Do you have any idea?
I don't.
I was curious why there's Native Americans served in the thousands in Vietnam, thousands. In other wars, even today, all these new wars going on, they're still serving. And I hope they get the honor and the reputation that, we serve for this country. So I was hoping that they get a more recognition than that. Of course, like our code talkers, they're well documented now, but so that was just a thought I'd ask you about. About that.
What do you think the right kind of recognition would look like?
Well, the Native Americans, they never say that how many Native Americans served in all these services, Very little is mentioned, if anything, so maybe this little thing, I would just like to say that I would like to see more recognition for Native Americans that served in all units, including women, men and women that served Native Americans. So I'd just like to, hopefully they get recognized for their service.
There was one thing that I wanted to ask you about, and if you don't want to talk about it, we'll just stop. But you mentioned earlier that you had gotten really good at walking point, and then at some point you didn't walk point, and bad things happened.
Right.
Are you comfortable talking about any of that?
Well, I pretty much said what I wanted to say. After a while, you can't. You're going to eventually run into something. You can't constantly be out point. And there's other men that have to serve their time just as much as I did. So, I did it because I felt I was fairly good at it. But you can't. Your good luck's going to run out sooner or later. So, and I was getting short. It's time for me to come home. I didn't want to get killed in my last day, which has happened to other men there. A few weeks before you've spent a whole year there, and you just can't take that chance. For some reason, I must have just had, what do you call, luck on my side. I was always in the right place when bad things were happening. I wasn't in the wrong place, So there was like 3 different incidents that happened that if I'd have been there, I'd have been right in the shit, as they say. But anyway, I just happened to move out at the time for some reason, because a lot of it is luck, just plain old luck.
Sure.
So I just was at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Now, Chuck was telling me about a situation where a helicopter had been shot down, and you had to guard it.
Yes.
Overnight, until somebody could come and, I don't know what, dispose of it, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. I forgot to mention that. That's one incident happened. A gunship got shot down, and
where were you?
I don't know exactly.
In the Delta?
Yeah, it was in the Delta, somewhere out there. That's our area of operation. Well, the chopper got shot down, and luckily the VC were coming to get it. The pods and all the ammo and stuff, but the pilots had enough time to radio another chopper to pull the pilots out of there, and they took some of the important parts in there. But our unit was the closest by to where this chopper crashed. So they called us, and we went and we encircled it right away, and we were covering it, and they said they're going to send out another a bigger chopper to pull it out of there. So we hung out a day, 2 days went by, and we didn't do anything. Finally, the lieutenant called in, what are we going to do about it? They said, there's no chopper, no crane, I guess they call them, to get it out of there. Do something with it. Dispose of it. So it was one of those days I was feeling good. We took some C4 and a couple of hand grenades, and it was one of the times that I actually volunteered for something to do. But I knew what I was doing, so we took C4 and some firing caps, and we put them right where the rockets, those pods were still there, and lit the fire. They gave us a cord. The cord was no more than about 2 feet long, or even less. And I fired that sucker up, and the other guys with me, before I did, they disappeared. They left, took off, and started running. But I had to finish the job. I fired the fuse, and I took off running. And it was quite a ways. We were way out there, maybe, I don't know, about half a meter away or something. But anyway, before I got back to where the rest of the unit, it blew up. And we had, I don't know how many pounds of C4, plus the rockets itself. It blew the whole thing up. We had mud flying all around us. So I just laid down in the field there till all the mud settled up. And the other guys were yelling at me, "Hey, Chief, where you at? Let's get over here." They thought I didn't make it back, but we all got back safe. And he's put us in for an award for doing that. And the chopper was destroyed, but just as we were leaving, then we got firefight. They gave us a goodbye with a bunch of rounds of AK-47s, and we got out of there. Yeah, we did our job.
Yeah.
That was a good, safe day.
Yeah. I was looking at the cover here of this book, and the subtitle is "The Hopeless to Hardcore Transformation of 4th Battalion, 39th Infantry." It sounds like Colonel Hackworth was, kind of turning somebody around, turning a unit around.
Yeah, that's what he did. He called us the hardcore, and he wanted us to. They were kind of down eventually, I guess. We were getting too many losses, quite a bit of losses, and how he came with that, gave us a good speech, told us that we were going to do, a lot better job. We're going to stop getting any KIAs anymore. So he was just there a short time, because my time was just about over when the time he came. So, and I'm not sure did he leave, what his rotation was, but he was supposed to do a transformation, make us a better unit. And I guess we survived the last part of it, so I guess, I don't know much more than that. I just know that he seemed to be a good leader.
So you said you're 76 years old?
Yes.
Can you talk at all about how much that 1 year informed who you are today?
Yeah, well, oh man, it's hard to cover that thing. It was just, the main thing is that I made it back. A year was turmoil. It's the most, I don't know, what would you say, exciting, dangerous, whatever. The worst thing that could have happened was that year. It was
intense.
Traumatic. It was intense. So, all my life I've had other things, but you go over there and you're in a situation that's just between life and death. So it was worst of, and I don't know if there are too many good times, but it was one of the worst times in my life. And just thank God I made it home.
Yeah. But you seem, in addition to being grateful that you made it out of there alive, you also seem proud of the duty that you performed.
Yeah, I served my country. That's the part that I'm, feel good about.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's it, pretty much.
Our thanks to Red Eagle Rael for sharing a little of his story, and to Chuck Howe for making the interview happen. David Hackworth's book, Steal My Soldiers' Hearts, is available in paperback on Amazon.com, and you can see a photo of J.D. Challenger's painting, Ashes to Dust, by visiting jdchallengergallery.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more stories of service, sacrifice, and healing. See you then.